on TV, online, and on your smartphone. This is Ticker News.
The Green Edition, in association with the Root brand, inspiring greatness with natural solutions for people to reach their highest and healthiest potential.
Hello and welcome to the Green Edition, exploring hot topics and challenges in the world of business, economics and health today. My guest today is Clayton Thomas, founder and owner of the Root Brands, a company dedicated to developing green technologies. Recently, Clayton featured on the Dr. Bob Martin radio show. The radio show is the longest and largest running health and wellness radio program in the US and is heard on over 400 radio stations as well as all streaming platforms. Now, before we get into the subject matter at hand today, which is the power of nature's green antitoxins, let's take a look at Clayton featuring in the Dr. Bob Martin interview.
In hour number 2, we had an opportunity to interview somebody by the name of Clayton Thomas, who is the co-founder of Root Wellness. Clayton is a health and wellness expert researcher with 25 years of experience. He also is the co-host of the Green Edition Health and Wellness Show that can be seen on Ticker News broadcasts found at tickernews.co or co. Last week on the program, we were discussing how human beings from literally before we're born are exposed to a whole lot of different toxins that accumulate in our mother's bodies and passed on to us, and then we get out into the world and we are exposed to water and air and food and cosmetics and pesticides, you name it, and we eventually develop this toxic body burden which undermines our health and wellness. And all kinds of issues then start cropping up and nobody can figure out what they're caused by. We go to doctors and they start treating the symptoms as opposed to what the cause was, to cover up the symptoms. And that's one way to treat, I guess, not the one I prefer, and I think not many of you prefer that either, or at least maybe you do on a temporary basis, but you want to get to the root of the problem, and that's what we discussed last weekend on the show. Now, when I first met Clayton and his brother Pierre, we talked about my interest in this topic, which I have a great interest in it because I know how vitally important it is to make sure that the body is not burdened full of toxic chemicals. These are things that I have measured in my own practice for decades. 30,000 patients later, you can trust that I have uncovered tests and biometrical measurements of substances from hair to urine to blood to saliva, breath testing, so that I could serve my patients as well as possible to find out what they were struggling with and then put into action a plan to reduce what it was that their body was struggling to get rid of but couldn't do it on its own. Now, when I first met Clayton and Pierre, I agreed to take a urine test to find out what my baseline toxic metal load was, which I did. And I had some imbalances, some slight imbalances, but everything really looked pretty good on the test. And I thought, oh, shoot, that's great. Come to find out, that's really the baseline. And then when you move forward with taking a deep nutritional cleansing program, such as Clean Slate by the Root Brands, you find out how much is hiding in your tissues. And that's exactly what happened to me. The first test, it looked pretty good. I was feeling really good about it. I took the Clean Slate substance, which is a liquid supplement, which I'll have Clayton Thomas detail to you momentarily here. And then we retested my urine, and oh my gosh, did I not know that I had all kinds of toxic loads of stuff that I am grappling with. I'm not symptomatic, I sure don't want to be either, including antimony, cesium, nickel, thallium, tungsten. And when you hear about some of these things and what they are and where they come from, let's just take a couple here. Antimony compounds used in flame-retardant materials, paints, enamels, glass, and pottery. My body, over the years that I've been alive, 6+ decades, I apparently have absorbed and consumed that in some manner, and it was stuck in my tissues. Well, now it's leaving my body, thank goodness, as a result of taking Clean Slate by the Root brands. And my health can only get better from here. I thought I was doing good already. Here's something else that was in there, cesium. Oh, you may have heard of cesium. It's a radioactive substance. You don't want that in your body. Cesium is a major component of nuclear fallout. How in the heck did I get that in my body? I've never been near a nuclear power plant. Guess what, folks? It's in the air. You breathe it in. It absorbs. Here's something else, nickel. Nickel's a hard, silvery, white metal substance used a lot in dental products, but when you come in contact with nickel, whether it's breathed or you touch it or whatever, it can harm your lungs, your stomach, your kidneys. Exposure to nickel can also lead to cancer. It's in my body. I had no idea. And now I'm working hard to get it out with something called Clean Slate. It's so simple. Here's something else we discovered as a result of taking this post-test. After 6 weeks of Clean Slate working to flush this stuff out, thallium. Now, thallium, that's really something else, not good for you. Thallium can affect your nervous system, your heart, your liver, your kidneys. And if you only knew some of the symptoms that go along with that, I don't have time to go over it. And lastly, tungsten, which is a substance that I apparently was exposed to somewhere along the line. It's probably the least of all the toxics, but there you have it. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 substances that were perpetuated and flushed out of my cells unbeknownst to me as a result of taking this highly cleansing but yet simple and pure Clean Slate product. And with that, I want to welcome Clayton Thomas back to the Dr. Bob Martin Show. Hello, Clayton. How are you today, sir?
You know, last week we were a little bit apart, but today we're really apart because I get to join you from Ljubljana, Slovenia, instead of Nashville, because I was in Prague yesterday, Berlin the day before, and we've got 9 more locations to go over the next 2 weeks for having discussions with people all over Europe about what you were just hitting on. So, I was so excited to hear that I was going to come join you again a week later, which gave me an indication of what we got back in your testing. But how cool is it to see how simple it is to get a lot of this stuff out quickly?
Exactly. And last week, because we were going to talk about it last week, and the lab was just a little bit delayed in getting it back, I said, well, Clayton, you got to be back on the show next week when I do receive the results. And I was just waiting to see the results. I thought, oh, this is going to be good. I'm a person who's done a lot of fasting and cleansing. I eat organic foods as often as possible. I do all kinds of detoxification through saunas and steam rooms and all, you name it. I think I've done a good job because, you know, if you talk the talk, you better be ready to walk the walk.
Well, what an insightful interview. Let's bring in Clayton Thomas. Now, Clayton, this interview with Dr. Bob Martin is quite interesting to see, particularly with looking into Dr. Bob Martin's impressive background and highlighting the great use and power of your product, Clean Slate. First, let's dive into him being a very healthy and active person, but still considering that heavy metals and environmental toxins are evident with all of us, even those that are healthy. These toxins are in everyone. Clayton, let's just remind our viewers, what exactly is Clean Slate in this situation?
Clean Slate's basically the little green garbage truck that can use what nature created to clean up the environment, to clean up every aspect of your human body over time. So it's something simple to take the trash out morning and night.
it's interesting to see how Clean Slate works. How does the technology work though? How did you formulate Clean Slate to look into those particular areas?
So in nature, volcanic eruptions actually have created little crystals and clays that act as that little green garbage truck, as a cage to trap toxins in the environment. Process to make Clean Slate basically breaks up those cages into small enough fragments that can work like a cage in the ocean to grab crabs. If you think of the deadliest catch, where you can send down a trap empty, leave it down for a little bit, and bring it up with a bunch of crabs in it, and then throw them out. This is the simple process of Clean Slate.
Yeah. Clayton, I'm more interested when using Clean Slate. Why should people become more proactive with their health? Why is this becoming so important now rather than later?
The biggest issue is we're polluted. We're completely toxic from the time that we're conceived. So when you look at your health, you look at your performance, you look at your longevity, the most important thing you need to do is address the poisons, the toxins, the pollutants that are inside your system. That is the most important thing to address. And doing anything else prior to that is a literal waste.
So why did you create your product Clean Slate then, into looking into these heavy metals and environmental toxins that really affect people, and more looking into the internal factor than just our external factor as well?
So through about the last 20 years of experience, realizing that the problems that we face are actually predicated on us being polluted, and knowing that the literature has shown that toxicity from heavy metals and different environmental pollutants are the primary cause of most of our chronic degenerative diseases. The most important thing was to use what nature created in a manner of today's best science, using a Harvard nanobiotechnologist to create a mechanism that can be used throughout the human body to clean up the inside, as well as it's been used for millennia to clean up the outside.
Clayton, I'm interested into listening more into your interview with the Dr. Bob Martin radio show. We're investigating into healthy people, so wanting to be more proactive in the internal factors that are affecting them. What are those factors that are affecting them, and how can we use Clean Slate to look into those factors?
You know, the first part is understanding that we're dealing with a level of pollution that we've never seen before in human history. You know, that every year there's thousands of new chemicals that are created, but you have the foundational toxic heavy metals, things like mercury, lead, aluminum, cesium, arsenic, and other toxic pollutants, and then a list of different fire retardants and chemicals and things that we're all familiar with now, from PBEs, PBDs, PCBs, PFAS, and such. All of these chemicals don't go away. They're forever chemicals, so they don't dilute in the environment. So they're in the environment, and through being in the environment, they're in us. Our moms put those toxins into us when we were in the womb, and we're exposed to them every day that we're breathing, eating, drinking, and just being in the environment. So the most important thing to do is to get those things out, because it's all of those toxins, all of those chemicals that create all of our problems.
Absolutely. So Clayton, lastly, what is one key takeaway that you want our viewers to come away with, especially looking into your product, into Clean Slate?
You are a mess. And do the same thing that Dr. Bob did. Not only is he a doctor of 30 years of experience that's been focused on the importance of detoxification of his clients for 30 years, but he was able to prove himself, not paid, but to do the testing on his own to see if Clean Slate was actually effective. And he found that it's done more for him than anything else he had ever done. You're no different than he is. We're all alike. We're all polluted, and you just have to clean up the mess. And this is probably the simplest, most effective means of doing it. Absolutely.
Well, that's the time that we have today. Thank you so much, Clayton. That's the program for now, and of course, whilst the Root Brands is the presenting sponsor of this program, all opinions and views in this segment are of course general nature and not to be taken as medical advice. Thank you again to CEO, founder and wellness expert Clayton Thomas for joining us on the Green Edition. You can catch up on this program at tickernews.co. I've been your host, Benay Ozdemir, and I'll see you all very soon.